Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Live with the Artist Forge. My name is Nicole York. I will be your host, and with me today, as usual, your wonderful co-hosts and founding members, Becca Bjorky and Bassam Sabah. Hi, friends.
Hello.
If you are hanging out today, say hi in the comments. I'd love to chat with you. I miss you guys. I am very lonely. I'm so stuck in my writerly life. I need the people.
You're working too hard.
This is probably true. Yeah, this is probably true. Friends are here. Hi, friends. I think I better go over and jump in our group real quick so I can.
Crystal.
Crystal, yay! I'm running in there real quick too so I can see. So I can see people. Hi, Crystal. How are you today? Bassam, Becca, how are y'all? How are you guys doing?
Becca, say something. Your facial expressions in the last few weeks have been on like morphine or something. Not morphine, sorry, the opposite of that. I'm sorry.
I struggle with this question because I don't like the bullshit of I'm great, guys. This is fantastic. I'm just like, no, I'm not having a good time. So you can get some confused facial expressions in lieu of my whining.
Not to jump in too deep too fast, but my therapist told me to stop judging myself all the time. So I'm just going to throw that out there real quick because I also have the tendency to be like to judge my reactions or my feelings to things like I shouldn't be feeling or I should be feeling or it's not good that I'm or whatever, instead of being like, this is just a thing that's happening now. So that need to like apologize for myself and being like, well, I don't want to share or do or say. And then also to be like, well, I shouldn't because it's bad. It's like, why are you doing that? Why? Who told you that that you needed to be palatable for everybody all the time, or that your feelings are bad, or you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, there's kind of a distinction though between like being palatable and not needing to publicly cry on a live stream on the internet for the entire world to see. I mean, but your therapist has a great point there, right? Like, we don't need to judge ourselves so harshly, but it is worth acknowledging the company you're in and applying that context to yourself when answering questions like, how are you? Like, if my kindergartner's teacher asks me that, I might temper the response a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Does the answer have to be complicated? Could it not just be, I'm doing well, thank you?
See, but that's what I mean. That's the
what if you say, I'm struggling right now?
What's that? There's like a meme that's like, bro, I'm straight up not having a good time, and that's what you guys get from me. Bassam, how are you?
I am okay. Let me describe how I am. I'm feeling good in general. As I mentioned to some of you, I just kind of experienced one of those life moments of being married for 35 years, and you look back and you say, "Holy shit, 35 fucking years!" Right? And like, when you ask people how long you've been married, and they say 25, 30, 35, 40, you say, "Oh my god, that's a long time." Well, that's me now, right? So that happened this weekend. Business wise, I'm in a rut, not going well. Hit a wall and working on punching holes through that wall. And health wise, doing great. And other than that, can't be more complicated than that.
I like these answers. I think a rule should be, if you ask somebody how they're doing, then we should be able to tell you. So maybe the rule needs to stop being we ask people how they're doing just to be polite, and then don't ask people how they're doing unless you really mean it. So when I am asking you guys, I really mean it, in part because I feel like we get to be a little bit of avatars for our community. And for people who are not doing well, we always feel like we have to disguise that. And we can't say, hi, I suck right now. You know what I mean? And I feel that just kind of perpetuates this idea that we have to be okay all the time. And sometimes we're just not. And it's okay to not be okay too, you know?
But I guess the answer could be catered to whoever's asking the question, right? I mean, there's some people that ask you how you're doing, and you really want to tell them exactly how you're feeling because that's the kind of friendship you have with them or relationship you have with them, right? And then some others, well, you know what? I'm doing great. It's a nice day outside. All good. Thank you. So I don't know where we fall. I think we could talk about anything here, right? So, but yeah, and we have,
We have.
right? So
I
I'm comfortable
feel
telling
like
you how I feel, but my feelings are kind of like I said, the amplitude is not very high, right? Like they're not up and down. So like, yeah,
right.
yep.
I feel like with every birthday, my garden of fucks gets more and more barren. And so I've stopped trying to like just make people easy with my responses to things. And so like at the grocery store, sometimes they'll be like, "How are you today?" And I'm like, I'm not great. How are you? Like I've kind of stopped trying to just make these easy, shallow interactions with people. And to not like even I think this amuses my husband, but even we've had door-to-door salesmen come by recently and they've started being really pushy and they're using that sales tactic where they don't give you room to talk unless they've asked you a question. So like they ramble and ramble and ramble and say, "Now what about you? How is that working for you?" And the thing is, we're so used to these polite interactions that we're forced to answer that question, because if you were to interrupt and cut them off and be like, "I'm not interested today, no thank you," that would be rude. So most people will deal with that rather than have some of that social discomfort by just being like, "Not today, Junior." Well, the last kid that was here was trying to do that to me, and I told him twice. I said, "Look, I'm good, not now. I think my husband and I will find somebody if we want to do this in the future." And he's like, "Well, yeah, but," and just wouldn't stop. And so finally I told him, "I'm going to close the door in your face." And he goes, and he's kind of like surprised, but like, at what point does this whole "we need to be nice to each other for the sake of niceness" become like self-sabotaging? I'm not going to go pretend I want to talk to you if I don't have anything to say to you. I'm not interested in what you're putting out. So, very straightforwardly, like, I don't need to be mean to you, but this is now the consequence of you not listening to me. Yeah, the garden is empty. It's not even being plowed or tilled anymore. I think weeds are growing in my garden at this point. My inner Karen has grown strong in the absence. How are you, Matt?
Oh, well, it's complicated. No, everything is great on my end. Like walking into this conversation just a little bit late because I was caught up doing some editing and I was like, oh God, it's time for the call. And I jump on and it's a complicated answer. And I don't know what side of the argument to be on right now. Like, do I go in depth or do I keep it surface? So I'm going to play it safe and just be like, I'm here.
Okay, but I have a very, very important question for you, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Why are you wearing a t-shirt? You usually have a jean jacket on.
Yeah, I know. So here in
And it's black and you and I are black and white also. Look at that.
here, I know, ebony and ivory, man. That's you and me. So I am I'm working from home today. Today is a work from home, dress from home type of day. So yeah, it is nothing but comfy clothes. I don't know when I took this t-shirt off. Might have been a couple days ago. But it's that, covered in dog hair, just focused on the task, like
Goblin mode, 100%.
So, yeah. So again, when it was time to join the call, I was like, do I put on the cape or do I just stay here and you get what you get? So you get what you get. You get big pompadour hair that I'm trying to get into something manageable, and homeless guy beard and hairy t-shirt. Let's talk art because everything's great.
I support it. I'm in for goblin mode, man. I took a shower yesterday. First time in like a week. So
it's amazing how quickly things go by, isn't it? Like, and we can justify. I'm like, it's only been like this season.
Yeah. Right? I've had my quarterly bath. It's fine. So Dennis had a great point. Like, these polite little interactions, and most of the time we go through them thoughtlessly, and they do kind of sorry, Tom. Sometimes my ADHD gets the best of me. I don't know what to say. It seems like a lot of work to shower. I'm like, I haven't even gone outside of my house. Nobody's gonna see me. I've been wearing these clothes for 3 days. Who's going to know? It's not hurting anybody. It's fine. But I think Dennis is right. Like we can shut our brains off for a lot of those interactions and just kind of respond, you know, without really meaning anything by it. And it does make connections a little bit more honest if we're at least honest with each other. Like they do become a little bit more meaningful, even if we don't engage in like the whole small talk thing, you know?
So I was just editing before I got on here the podcast that I recorded last week with a woman named Melissa June, and she runs a legal centric women's group called The League. Phenomenal woman. She's brilliant and motivated cancer survivor, and we're talking about networking and connection and how we both despise the small talk angle. Right, you walk into a room and it's just you have the same small talk with the same people all the time. How's the weather? How's your wife and kids and all the things? And I just want to dig in and be like, so when was the last time you cried? Right? Like I want to open with stuff like that because I want to get to the heart of the matter. Like if you were doing shots with the Pope, what shots would you be doing? You know, and just throw everybody off balance, get some different conversations going rather than yeah, so good cheese. Yeah. They got the sharp New York cheddar, you know. But yeah, the small talk thing, I think I hit a certain age and I'm like, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So how are you guys doing? How's the weather?
Yeah. So let's just normalize being honest when somebody asks us how we are. It doesn't mean we have to be mean to them, right? I'm not well, George. But if somebody's like, how are you doing? Not so hot. I'm not good. You know, maybe we'll feel less alone in those things and less like we have to hide or mask ourselves when we show up in places to try to make everybody else comfortable. And maybe that just ends up making everybody be like, I'm just going to show up how I am. With that in mind, audience members, I want to talk about something, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think because, and I'm in obviously many different parts of the arts community and kind of different groups, and I've been seeing a kind of interesting thing happen over and over again, often in my personal interactions with a lot of these people. And I know for those hyperfixators like me who tend to like neurotically do a lot of things all the time, people tend to come at us with the question of like, how do you do it? I don't know how you do it all. Oh, you do so much. And those of us who are doing it are like, yeah, I'm like dangling by a hair all the time. But the other part of that question usually comes down to like, how do you get the courage to do it all, or like the guts or the balls, you know, like however you want to like think about that. How do you get the idea that you can go and do all of this stuff? Because I am so scared to put myself out there. And I see this really interesting dichotomy in the artist community where there seemed to be this balancing act of like stratospheric self-confidence and crippling self-doubt. And it seems like they're on a teeter-totter, right, all the time, going like up one side and down the other. Like, yeah, I'm going to go put myself up for this award. And then, oh my God, everybody hates everything I do. They're all going to laugh at you. And that's the reason I bring this up, is because my answer to that question is usually, I just think I can do it, so I go. And like I fully recognize that I'm going to fail probably multiple times, but I have this level of like unearned self-confidence, especially in things I haven't done yet. I say like that's my biggest character flaw is I'll see somebody like build a beautiful bookshelf with like dovetailed and all these things. I'm like, I could do that. Like anything, you show me anything and I'm like, I could probably do that. And then I'm going to want to try. Anyway, I bring all of that up to say, I'm curious how y'all see your fellow artists and our like approach to art, because I have not had any experience with anybody that did not fall on that spectrum of ridiculous self-confidence, crippling self-doubt. And it does seem to be a constant teeter-totter. And I very rarely come across any artists who were just high all the time, where they're like, yeah, I'm great, everything's good, I can do anything, I can go for all the stuff, who did not also slip off that end into must hide in a corner, let nobody see my face. And I wonder if this is either a feature Like, is there a feature in there somewhere that actually is useful to us in doing this? Or do we end up as artists because of that? Like, I mean, and that could be a completely, like, I may be setting up a false premise entirely, but I'm just really interested in how that applies to us as artists in general. Because I don't get imposter syndrome, but I do get failure feelings. Yeah. Go.
No, I think a lot of this boils. The more I learn, I think it boils down to less about being an artist and up and down, and it's where are you just mentally in general, right? Because I find that when I start comparing myself or looking at other people or feeling imposter syndrome or feeling like a fraud or anything like that, it's because my mental state overall is down. I'm not in a positive place. And that could be anything. It could be stress from work. It could be that it's raining outside. It could be a fight with your lover or your partner. There are things that often put me in a negative space, and I then translate that into my art as well. Meaning, like, I feel less motivated to do anything. Therefore, I'm comparing myself more. Why do they have this? Why do they have that? And I then reflect that back around and say, why am I jealous of that? What am I feeling? What am I lacking? What behaviors am I going through that are causing me to feel this way? And because I know that when I'm feeling great and I'm producing and I'm in a really good place mentally and physically, I don't care about any of that other stuff. I don't care that people are doing well or putting out wonderful things. I look for it. I say, congratulations, good for you. But I know that I've worked my way into some bad habits. I feel less gratitude on a daily basis than I used to. And these are all things that are my own shit to deal with. But I know that when I notice I'm not producing or I feel bad or my art sucks or why is this person doing this, and that has nothing to do with photography or art. It has to do with something else going on in my life. It's just easy for me to see it when it pops up in these other places. Does that answer part of your question? I mean,
Yeah.
I think the imposter syndrome feel, the comparison, the feeling bad, generally for me is always indicative. It's a symptom of something else much deeper that's going on in me and has very little to do with actual comparison or actual imposter syndrome.
So can I ask did you have the same feelings while you were working like corporate world, non like artistic jobs? Did you have those same comparisons and self-doubt and like those kind of
Yeah,
things then
without a
as well?
doubt. I think, especially, I mean, when it comes around to performance reviews, right? Your quarterly, biannual, annual performance reviews, you can't help but get into that little bit of a mindset because you spend a month writing all the things you did good and all the things you did bad and where can you improve. And I found that year after year, if I went into it with the positive mindset of, oh, I crushed this past year, it was very easy for me to go into my boss's office and justify a raise or a promotion or whatever it is. In the last few years of my career, where I was really burned out, I went from top 5% performer to bottom 5% in a year. And you don't do that unless you're burnt out. There's something else going on. There was just a bunch of stuff. But for me, I wasn't doing a poor job, but I felt those same feelings when there was something else. I was going through divorce, I was moving, right? All of those were affecting my job. And I look at it the same way now. All the junk that I'm going through affects my self-employment. But
Yeah.
I'll just kind of leave it there. So it's less about the art and more about all the inner stuff that I have to sort out.
So I'm interested in that because I know when I was in the military, I never had any of those questions about myself or the people around me. I know my husband doesn't ever wonder if he's a good enough project manager, right? Like he doesn't ever be like, oh, I don't manage projects very well as good as Joe. Like Joe's a really good project manager. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious for folks who maybe this is not how they self-identify, because not all people who work in the arts field self-identify as artists, right? There's a lot of folks who are kind of craftspeople or business people, and art just happens to be the field that they work in. I'm just curious how often, like maybe you were a closet artist the whole time and you had to end up as like a photographer because like that's where you were going already, like artist soul inside, you know? But I'm curious, so if you're in the audience today, if your main gig is not in the arts, or even if it is, but if it's not in the arts, do you get those same artist feelings that a lot of us talk about? That
I also don't think there's a whole lot of people in the role of positively affirming project managers out there. You know what I mean? Like everyone's just like, oh my God, you're so talented. You're an artist. You can draw, you can paint, you can write. No one's going to say your Gantt chart kicked ass. Like no one's ever going to say that, right? They'll just be like, next slide, keep the PowerPoint shorter.
You got
right?
the job done.
You got the job done, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit skewed because those in the performing arts or the creative arts, there's always, whether it's real or not, a judgment scale. No one gives a shit about your project plan, right? So you're not getting that same type of input and that emotional connection to the work. I'm sure there are some people that do. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking in generalities, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think, for me, I never really thought about the work. When I was doing integrations for acquisitions, it was about connecting to the people that we just acquired. It wasn't about exactly what their health plan looked like. It was more, okay, you're stable, you've got a job, making deeper connections. That's where I felt I succeeded or failed. I didn't ever, though, compare myself to, Prasad, who was in another part of the company and world doing the same exact job. I didn't compare myself in that same way. And I don't know why we necessarily do it in art. And the only thing I can think is that public level affirmation that gets attached to us.
So Lindsay's saying that feeling described, I have only ever felt when creating art, not with other work. I wanted to do well, but not the same as how it is with my artistic pursuits. And I think that gets kind of to the heart of the idea, along with what you were mentioning, Matt, is that when somebody praises our art, it doesn't feel like they're praising our art, right? It feels like they're praising us, because the art comes out of us, and it comes out of, at least for those of us, I want to say, who self-identify as artists, because it's not fair to put that onto like business people who are just doing the business of art and don't like feel the art that they're making. I wonder how much of it has to do with that, because I've had a couple negative reviews on my recent work. And it's been really interesting to stumble across those and to feel which ones feel like they apply, which ones I can really tell, like as a longtime writer on the internet, which ones I can tell this is just a person feeling their feelings. It doesn't make a lot of sense to apply, like it doesn't really apply, versus ones where I'm like, oof, like that one's rough. That one hurts a little bit. Do I feel like it's hurting me? Am I seeing that as a reflection of them on the work? When I was writing nonfiction stuff for places like Fstoppers, you could say shit to me. I did not care. I knew I'm writing stuff, like your opinion on it really doesn't matter to me. With the fiction novels, it's kind of an entirely different story. And I definitely have to intentionally remove myself from that. Whereas the nonfiction stuff, I don't give a crap. I can make you mad. I don't care. When it comes to my work, my personal stuff, there's definitely a different level of self-attachment to that. Tom's saying, I wonder if the aspects of joining competitions affect that sense of self-worth. And I think it kind of innately have to, wouldn't it?
I mean,
I don't do competitions on purpose, so I'd be interested to hear what you guys.
Yeah, I don't do them either.
I was going to say, Bassam, you and I enter into the Portrait Masters occasionally. I haven't done it in a few different rounds, but I know, not even speaking about myself, but when scores come out, we see these huge threads of people. Why did I get this low score? Why did I score like this? And they're looking for information as to how they can get better at the craft, but they're also missing the forest for the trees because they don't realize that, hey, it might have not have been the score that you wanted, but it's still affirmation that you are at a professional level and that you're getting the same merits that you would get similarly through like PPA or any other competition, and that it shouldn't be viewed as a negative. It should be viewed as
It's just information.
Just information, just a data point.
Right.
But I think people really get so emotionally attached to the work, and it's hard not to, and then have that be judged by others. I think Tom makes a really good point. I wonder if the people that enter into competitions or put their stuff out there with the intention of getting positive affirmation back, that's their intention, to get affirmation, to get adulation, all of that. If that's the driver, then sure, you're going to be more susceptible to the ups and downs. But if you're just putting out work, I was talking to Parker this morning, and he just put out shit because it's beautiful to him, and he doesn't care what people say or don't say. And I think that's the detachment that I yearn for. Detach from my work in that way, that I can put it out and just be like, this is me. I wish I could say I didn't care, but I do.
Yeah.
Because I think it would just save me a lot more mental energy to just have my stuff, put it out there, not care what anybody thinks. It's easy to say I don't care. I care.
I think there's one thing we haven't talked about, and that's oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. No, one thing we haven't talked about is personality traits, right? What you're like, because I mean, what Matt described earlier as the moods that he goes through. I think everybody goes through those moods. Right? And for me, it comes down to your personality trait, your insecurities. You know, what drives you? What are you driven by? Right. So somebody who's an overachiever by nature, it's a personal trait. It's a right. No matter where you put them, they're going to be doing the 1,000 things. They have that self-confidence. They may not have the self-confidence, but they have that drive to be on top of everything, to excel, to be comparable to others, to be better than others, right? They're still going to go through the emotions that you talked about, Matt. But then you compare that to somebody who will just kind of isn't driven by overachieving. Is just driven by whatever validation, whatever form of validation they're looking for, and they get it just doing their job, and they're not there comparing where I am, and they're not multitasking, or not multitasking, but they're not doing 17,000 things at the same time, because it's not in their nature. They go through these ups and downs, right? So if I look at Nicole asked a good question about corporate world. If I look at my career at corporate world, I don't describe myself as an overachiever, and even though I moved up pretty high in the company, I knew I was limited. I knew I wouldn't go to the next level because I wasn't willing to do what my colleagues are doing to get to the next levels, right? And could I do it? I have absolutely 100% confidence that I can do it. Did I really want it enough to do it? No, obviously not, right? Because I would have done it. Right. So did I compare myself to others? Absolutely. I always do. I don't think anybody can resist doing that. But then it becomes, is that what drives you to achieve what you want to achieve? Or is it something else that drives you? Right. So that's, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. Right? So and I agree that from an art, for artists, the public aspect of it is probably what differentiates from corporate stuff or business stuff. And I thought of this: if you have an artist who's working in a business, who's actually an artist working as a retoucher or as an editor in a corporate world, right? Are they treated like the project manager? Like, are they treated as an artist, or am I an artist, or
right,
a project manager with an Excel spreadsheet? And I wonder.
Yeah. It's interesting because both of those things kind of get to the heart of, I think, why I find this question so interesting, because I wonder how often these personality traits end up in this field. You know what I mean? Like how are we overrepresented here? And if we are, like, what is it about those things that brings us to this place? Because having done other things, this is still what I would come back to chasing. You know what I mean? Like, having done other things, this is still where I would end up. And I think you're right about, you and Tom both kind of right about the public aspect of this, because in almost no other field, like we don't spend our time on the internet picking apart, you know, some architect's blueprints.
Right.
We don't share those things and be like, everyone, did you see these blueprints? They don't get viral on Facebook, but we watch artists do that all of the time. And books kind of go through the same thing. Photographs, like all of those things tend to have these aspects to them that make people want to engage and share. Like my husband's Gantt charts are never going to be like picked apart by the public, but that's part of our job as artists, right? As communicators, is like to have our work publicly dissected, because that's just what's going to happen. And maybe just the pure fact of that, in combination with what it is that we're doing, which is taking little pieces of ourselves and offering them up, it's a little masochistic. It's just like a little
Lindsay,
bit.
Lindsay has a good point of view there, because
I'm grabbing her comments real quick.
She's worked as an artist within a.
Yes, so I'm starting with her. I wanted to get to this last one as well, when she was mentioning when we were talking about contests. So her saying often their response to not doing well is bitterness. They thought they deserved better and haven't really learned the game yet, because there is a game to contests. I think that is something worth thinking about, and probably why I personally never wanted to enter any contests, is that I don't like placing my self-worth on the shoulders of somebody else, even if that's a person I admire, but often people whose opinions I don't always agree with. So like, I mean, something for me to think about anyway. So when I did design work for a company, it was no different than doing any other task. I didn't have the attachment to the work. It was work, but also my name wasn't on it. It was the company's name. And that's a totally fair point.
Private versus public, right?
Yeah. So from what I'm gathering from our conversation so far, in part, it seems obviously whatever personality traits we bring to the job tend to get amplified because they're under scrutiny via the work publicly, right? So like all the things that we are that go into our work then go out with our name on it for the public scrutiny of all the people, either to praise or to censure. And there just are not a whole lot of jobs like that. So you have to wonder what it is that leads us into that in the first place. Because
yeah, I wonder also if the fact that art is subjective, the whole art, no matter what type of art, is actually subjective versus spreadsheets and Gantt charts and so on, which could have some subjective aspects to them. But
right.
in general, they're very black and white, right? I wonder if that combined with being public or.
So I wonder then how often that makes us. So I know a lot of artists who have decided, or who have explained their experience of making art as being the only way that they feel that they can accurately communicate themselves or their thoughts or their feelings with everybody. And I wonder how often that just does stem from a hunger for communication or for community or for understanding or for somebody else to look at that little piece of our heart and go, me too. Like how often that is what we're searching for. And those few times when it does happen, those few transcendent times when somebody connects with your work in a way that, you're two kindred spirits, communicating through the same thing. If that does become so powerful that all of the other pain or stress or anything else that goes along with it just becomes the price that you pay for those transcendent moments. Dennis saying, I'm with Nicole. So far, I've not been that interested in putting my work in a contest because I really wonder if they will get what it's about, which is interesting. And I don't even know if I felt like get was the same thing. I guess more along the lines of I'm really happy if you like my work, but I don't feel the need for you to give me a score. I'd have to examine where that comes from a little bit. I'm sure part of it has to do with my desire to not do anything anybody tells me to do. And if you were to say something good or bad, I probably would be like, nah, I don't even want to do it anymore.
That
I have to
getting
examine
though,
that.
I mean, that's a good example, like, of the subjectivity of the art coming into play, though, right? And I haven't taken part in like formal contests like I know a lot of photographers do. But I once upon a time, when I was a wee lass and liked to send pictures to vanity magazines, to, get selected for publication. This was a weird one for me. So the theme for whatever this magazine was masks. And so I shot this nude series creating masks with shadows. I thought it was pretty cool. I still really like those photographs. They thought they were really cool, but they didn't understand how it was a mask. That was about my reaction. It wasn't even like that. It wasn't that it was offensive and that they didn't like my work. It's that they didn't get it. And I felt like it was conceptually very simple. It wasn't complex and profound or anything, but they didn't get it. And I feel that I've seen a lot of work in competitions or things that, people have been like, hey, I'm going to submit this or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of feels dumbed down. It doesn't feel explicitly conceptual. It doesn't feel very raw and authentic often. It feels like it's catering to the parameters defined by contests, and that changes what we feel is good. And I don't know. I'm not into it. I'm not into it. But yeah, so I feel you, Dennis. People don't get it sometimes. And having someone with a title and an accolade of some sort telling you that they don't get something or that it's not good, I feel could be very damaging, especially to younger artists.
It's really interesting, Becca, that you said having somebody with a title or an accolade, not get it. And it just reminds me, as Lindsay mentioned earlier, the idea that this is a game it's very much,
yes,
because so if I were to enter an image in Portrait Masters, I would have very specific things that I did on purpose, knowing the type of work that does well there, right? Like I would not put in an artistic whatever, something else, that would do well. Like, okay, example. So kind of similar story when I was back in the day looking to get my work published. It wasn't necessarily for me. It was because I needed other people to know it was published in order to increase my standing in my community. I knew models would want to work with me if they knew my cover was on the photo of a magazine or on the front page of a magazine somewhere, on a cover or a whatever. Those accolades didn't mean anything to me personally, especially once I learned that even my shit work could get on a cover. You know what I mean? I was even then less impressed with the fact that it was published. And of course, as I learned later on, that as well, like it's not a flex, but I felt at the time like that was a requirement in order to be what I wanted to be in my community, which was somebody who could work with the people I wanted to work with so I could make the work that I wanted to make. And as time has gone on, the less and less I have become interested in those kind of accolades, and the more I want people to respond to the work for itself because they connect with it or they're interested in it. It means something to them. I don't really care if somebody impressive tells me I did a good job. Now, to be clear, I want people to tell me I did a good job. I like it. I need to hear it. Give me words of affirmation, makes me feel good about myself. But I'm not seeking that, right? Like I'm not putting that out to you for those things. I'm not chasing that down so that somebody important can tell me I did a good job. I like it when it happens, but like I'm not going to give myself over to your judgment so you can confirm or deny that I should be doing exactly what I want. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Dennis saying, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bassam. I clicked on it before you started speaking. Most of the contests I've seen have ratings, etc., around the rules or ideas the judges think the image should look like. But if my idea does not fit within those preconceived rules, how could they judge my work? And I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Becca, but this is a big reason why when we discuss things like visual literacy, we're not discussing them according to style rules or genre rules or anything like that. We're discussing them as broadly as possible so that we understand what helps people understand what you made, not did the hand look pretty from this perspective because this perspective is bad for some reason, right? The rules are, or not the rules, but the way that the human mind perceives things when we discuss it in those broad terms, we're trying to do that from the perspective of, if you have this intention, these are tools you can use to help people understand your intention, not somebody's face was pointed out of the frame on the short side and that's bad, which is one of those common portrait critiques that makes me want to smack people around a little bit. What if I don't want you to be comfortable? What about that? What if I don't want pretty? What if that's not the point? Sorry, yes, you can tell I have feelings.
You tell them. You tell
honestly,
them.
this comes from having been on judging panels and having fought with my fellow judges who are looking at arbitrary rules as if they mean that this is how it should always be, and me having to say, this person very clearly broke the rules on purpose. If you would look at this thing and how it's built, you can see that. This is an extraordinary photograph. Please don't vote it out because it's not. I'm fine. I'm taking a breath. My cheeks are hot now. Lindsay said.
Throw back to that time of people roasting Henry Cartier-Bresson in that whatever Facebook group that was. Sorry.
What the fuck?
Lord.
How and why? I'm sweating now. Lindsay's saying I have a competitive streak. It doesn't change my value, and I don't truly change my work. But yeah, I tweak for the contest game. The goal is to win. I haven't won, but I keep torturing myself all the time because it hurts.
Yeah.
See,
you're the way you described your attitude towards context, very much like mine, Nicole. In that it comes down to intent and expectations, right? So what is your motivation for doing it? And in my case, I just have to say, Matt mentioned that I enter Portrait Masters. It's the only one I've entered. I think I've entered one other one once, but essentially I entered a lot of photos there. And my intent was very simple. It was like, I needed that accreditation. I needed it not for me, because I don't care for the accreditation. I don't care for that accolade. But I wanted to put something on my website for that one client, one client that is looking for something that say, this photographer is not a fake photographer. And I knew that my work is good enough to get those bronzes and a couple of silvers here and there. And if professional standard, that I'm going to get enough points to become a master photographer. And I've got that on my website. And funny enough, in the 3 years or whatever that I've had that accreditation, I've had one client once say, hey, I also noticed that blah, 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 which is my post on my website. So mission accomplished, but that was my motivation and that was my expectation. And yes, I did get disappointed when I only got a bronze and I thought it was a silver. Obviously, we all love that, right? But sitting back now, I enter, I think, the 3 free pictures every time, if you know what I mean. But because I don't need that, I'm not looking for the next that next accreditation. It accomplished what I needed to accomplish, and I don't have that competitive, spirit. I don't have this overachieving. I don't want to be, competing with some of the absolutely amazing artists that are winning these contests, right? I don't want to play the game.
Sure.
Don't need to.
Interesting. I like the discussion on competitions. I find some of them rather arbitrary and limiting to a particular generic standard and or style. Sad that it ended abruptly. On the other hand, if you are pursuing commercial assignments for portfolio reviews, et cetera, where the reviewers can hire you, that can be very helpful, which is very true. And in those cases, often the point is just to get yourself in front of those people, right? And then to figure out what kind of things they need to buy so that you can then make your portfolio look like that when you pitch yourself to those people, which is very different than putting yourself up for a board of reviewers and a competition where they have no influence over you making money at all, and not even always necessarily experience in the genre you shoot in, which is interesting. I think for art competitions, they should judge for breaking out of the current and past fads and doing it well. I don't think that they reward that behavior though. And I mean, there's certainly something about that. Particularly I've noticed in like PPA and stuff groups, there is a lot of really kind of adhesion to certain standards that don't always necessarily reward creativity in things, especially like composition. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting to think about that, but more interesting, I think, that, and I hope this doesn't sound, I am picking on contests a little bit, but I don't mean to pick on the artists who enter contests, more to talk about the fact that often these contests really exist for no other reason than to get people to be involved in something they're eventually going to pay money into. And yes, I know, I'm sorry. We ran off and hide in a hole really quickly. It's true though. We want you in our group. We want you in our whatever. We want you to buy this thing. We want you to pay for this class, this whatever. Get better so you can win, so you can have an award on your website that one person wanted to see. Like, you know, like we really just have to be asking ourselves what this is for. And that's not to say that there are a lot of people who have gotten into contests and they feel great about themselves. And when they get that feedback, they feel good. And that's amazing. And I'm super, super happy for those people that that's the experience they have. I just think it's worthwhile to look at as a community, what it's actually doing for us. What is it actually doing? Because here I'm going to jump in another hole real fast. Sometimes the people who are judging your work are not even that good. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done now. Throw me in a hole. I'm not loving entering competitions mainly because my work doesn't necessarily match the current editing and styling standards of parts of the industry. And do your clients like it? Who gives a shit about anything else? If the people who are paying for you love it, don't listen to anybody else and what they're saying.
So I had an original tangent based on your first question 45 minutes ago about self-confidence and self-doubt, right? And I've kind of been in this like deep rabbit hole learning about this concept of dual process theory. Have I ranted to you guys about this already? Nicole, I know I have, but
just go.
Matt, no idea what I'm talking about. All right, so this
just go, man.
Like the human brain, you run off two kind of different sets of processes. You have these dual processes. One is more instinctual. One is more cognitively intense and manages rather more of your kind of controlled political decisions and behaviors. So most of our behavior is actually very, very intuitive and very instinctual. So something like seeing that shiny gold, you know, I won this PPA award on the website, immediately we are going to form
authority bias.
Yes, right. And so the relationship between these two processes in our brain is how we control bias, how we make our decisions. And I've been thinking a lot, looking at artists, you know, why do different artists behave differently? So like looking at some of these people who are very confident, overconfident, whether or not we feel like it's deserved, you know, based on our own aesthetic preferences or, you know, judgments of their character, why are they going out there and finding success and being confident in themselves in these ways that other artists are not? And I've been kind of like in looking at people's behavior, I feel like those artists who do react more on instinct rather than getting caught up in the more kind of reflective system of their brain and overthinking and overanalyzing and needing to consciously, actively think and put all their, you know, caloric effort into thinking about their decisions and their art making. The ones who are doing things just on intuition and just going and not taking the time to really consider every little possible minutia are ending up with this more public and visible success. And, you know, I definitely like looking at my own behavior. When I was younger and I wasn't thinking about anything, I was just thinking about how I was high on hormones and obviously a creative genius. I was behaving that way. I had no problem asking people for things. I had no problem like looking for donors or buyers or, you know, waving my art around everywhere and look at how great it is. It wasn't great, but I thought it was, you know? So this kind of idea of like intuitive thought versus reflective thought, it then comes back also to this idea of competitions and what are we going for? We want people to make those intuitively instinctual decisions about our art and what they think is good when we're playing those games versus needing the time to sit and really reflect and think on something. A judge probably isn't going to do that. So it's this ongoing relationship between these two modes, anything we do. But especially
and it's important. it's important to remember too that they don't have a lot of time, right? Like when you're judging stuff, you have a time frame that you're having to work within because there is a lot of stuff to get through. And you're right, that really doesn't lend itself toward the kind of like deep reflection that some work needs in order to appreciate it fully. That's 100% true. And I apologize if it sounds like I'm really being mean to people, because I don't intend to be. I just want to be more critical of like what we're really doing when we do that stuff. And bringing that up, Dennis has a point here. The APA of Los Angeles, he was on the board for portfolio reviews twice a year. The reviewers are art buyers who hire photographers. The photographers go because it's a great way to connect with those they directly want to work with, and it's a chance to get feedback from them. Very different than a contest. Bottom line, showing your work to the right people can be very helpful, but just to get awards and recognition is a different game altogether. And I think it's important. I'm going to grab Virginia's comment too, because that ties into this kind of next thought. I've had work that was chosen for galleries that didn't do well in Portrait Masters. I've had work that got bronze. Then later I realized I sent a corrupted file and I think I should have gotten a terrible score. But what sells is more important in the long run. And these two thoughts are kind of connected, because I've mentioned before that for the average viewing community, and this is true for the average consumers of art in general, there is a barrier to enjoyment, right? A bar to entry, let's say, that's relatively low. Most people can enjoy work that is just above that bar. Let's say the masters are up here, the bar is down here. Most people sit right in here. They're completely happy with work that falls in this space. They see it, they enjoy it, they love it. I have seen lots and lots of, art sell and people have huge fandoms, and I would look at that art and consider it mediocre in terms of technique. That means nothing. My opinion means nothing, because that person has an audience who loves their work and buys their art. Some fantastic writer can look at my work and be like, mediocre. The people who read it and loved it still loved it. So that bar that we have to cross, everything beyond that is awesome. But how necessary is it to what your goals are for what you're making? If my goal is to be as technically perfect as possible, then maybe I really do need to go find lots of other writers or lots of other photographers or lots of other artists to pick apart my work and go, this isn't good enough and your perspective isn't quite right, and your shape, your lines aren't perfect here, whatever. Maybe I need that if that's my goal. If my goal is to sell my work, then the only people I really have to listen to is my audience and my buyers, and what do they say. And it's interesting because we've had this discussion that's back and forth as well, in terms of, do you make for you or do you make for an audience? And if you're selling your work, you have to find that right balance between creating things that matter to you, but you're also creating for clientele. So there's an entirely different balance there than just, if I'm making pretty things in my office and nobody ever sees them until I die, and then everybody goes, oh, look, she was a genius and no one ever knew. My approach is going to be entirely different, right? And maybe people wouldn't think I was a genius for another 20 years when styles have changed and ideas have changed and preferences have changed. And all of a sudden, the work that wasn't good enough while I was alive is lauded as visionary by people 10 or 20 years from now. And I mean, the same kind of cycle runs itself. I don't even know where I'm going at this point. I feel like my brain is just on wheels.
Here's a question. So don't turn this into an AI rant, please. I'm not talking about AI. I'm talking about the internet.
Was that directed specifically?
Everyone, please. So with the desire, I think this could be a whole longer conversation, but like the kind of like drive as artists to be seen and kind of desire some elements of fame or being witnessed.
Right. Communication requires partners, right?
Right. So in the case of where our art world in general is wildly oversaturated, does that need to be seen or to be awarded or to be lauded as famous or whatever? Does that still matter with saturation as it currently is? When there's 50 different kinds of photo awards with little icons you stick on your website that all look the same, does it still matter?
Well, the question is who's actually looking at the results of these things? Is it
Yeah.
other photographers, other artists, or is it by the buying public?
Mhm.
I bet you it's all other artists and photographers in general.
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
does it matter?
But even in Nicole's example of people finding her genius 20 years after she died, when the world is full of, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of other paintings, how like would yours still stand out? Or have we kind of reached this point where we're almost like curating what fame means on an individual level versus what it looked like maybe a century ago?
Well,
That's a weird kind of concept. But
the question that I'm going to ask is going to bring this in a different direction. So I want to give space for answering the question that you just asked.
Okay, I'll jump in real quick then before we go where you want to go, because I have a feeling it's going to be interesting. Are you asking, so I want to clarify what you're asking.
Mhm.
Are you asking if the desire to connect with people through art and I'm not sure I'm entirely clear on.
Yes, it was very kind of open-ended, general, theoretical nonsense. Does being acknowledged, potentially as genius on whatever level, or as famous, or as awarded, does it currently, like in the modern world that we live in right now, does it hold the same weight as it used to? Like when we're learning and kind of developing our ideas of what it means to be an artist and what we want out of being an artist. Is that really the same versus the history that we look back on while we're learning? Does that make more sense?
So like when if a gallery owner calls you a genius now and they have your work up next to AI work on their wall, as opposed to, I'm not going there, I'm just saying non-human made stuff, right? As opposed to 100 years ago when there were 50 classically trained artists and one of them became famous, and you mean like that had to go through 8 million gatekeepers, and having that title actually meant something? Is that,
yes,
am I getting?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know that it has ever actually mattered, aside from anything but making you more money. I don't think that it has ever actually mattered in terms of whether or not that art affected people. Because so I just spent $1,600 on a print, which I need to go pick up. But I spent it because this person, probably if I said the name of the photographer, nobody would have ever heard of them before. I don't give a flying fart in the wind. I really like this print. I like the uniqueness of it. I like the fact that every single print is very, very different because of the gum printing process that the artist used. I love the organic nature of it and the very Southwest feel of it. On a very personal, me to artist to work level, I feel connected to it. It's the most I've ever spent on a single print before. It could matter less to me if this person had their work up in MoMA, or if people thought that, it was anyway, you get my point. I don't think that it matters that title or the lauding of success matters when it comes to, do people personally connect with your work? Do they want to follow you and watch everything you've done and buy your work and support you because they connect to it? I don't think a title makes any difference in that when it's a purely artistic question. If it's a question of, are you going to sell more work than me? Maybe it depends on the audience. If we're talking about galleries who would like to have some kind of, they need to be able to value your work high so that people will spend high prices for it. Does that matter then? The story always matters. And maybe that's what it is at the end of the day, is the story. If the story is, here's a person who only makes one print a year and they do it with their toes, and they first build it out of clay and then they cast it and then they spit on it and rub their spit in, and they, and then somebody goes, that's a lot of work. That's cool. Okay, I want it. Does the same story, it exists in that little gold sticker too, right? The story is, here's a person who's good, right? Like that's the story that's being told by that little symbol of a win. And could that earn you more money from the right people? But if you were to take away all of those things and look at just the work, I don't think the gold sticker matters.
Yeah.
So I guess for sales, yes. The story, where the story is concerned, yeah. For the work itself, I don't think so. That's an answer on 3 levels. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I need to flesh out this thought more.
I think my straight answer to your question about oversaturation is yes. Oversaturation means less.
Yeah.
It's just like many other things in life. You know, like 40, 50 years ago, if you had an MBA, it was something special. Today, everybody can get an MBA. I mean, that's how I feel. That's how I think. You know.
Yeah.
When everybody's a superhero.
It's yeah. I mean, yeah.
But this is the angle that I was going to attack from the other side. Why is it saturated? Why is it saturated? Why should you give a shit if there's a 100 other people out there doing it? Are you in it to make the art? And these are rhetorical. Are you in it to make the art, or are you in it to make money? If you're in it to make money and you're in business, then yes, you have to think about competition. You have to think about the market and what it will bear and how many people and how much product you can sell and whatnot. But I think I really have a hard time, because I went through this argument a lot. There's not enough people. My market's too saturated. People are charging all the arguments we use, right? And I went through that for a long time, and I realized that the more I focused on all of that, I made that reality. Like I made more photographers show up. You know what I mean? Like I started seeing them everywhere, which would demoralize me more, instead of just focusing on what I do and just doing it. Like Lindsay said, just making the art, right? Just doing it and making sure that my world that causes me contentment was as secure as it could be. The second that I started thinking about the market and the saturation and what people are charging and how good their work is and why are people liking them, why do they have sponsors, why me, you know, it fell for me into this big place of ego, and it just felt gross. And I never felt as productive or connected to my work or connected to my clients when I was in that headspace, because I was thinking more about how it was going to be received than just doing the thing, which took my heart out of it. So I know that's a long way to get from saturation to there, but it was an interesting thing that I caught, because I think everything that you were just saying, when there are a lot of people, does it diminish, you know, the competition level and the worthiness? I agree with everything Nicole and Bassam just said. It's just curious to me that we take this perception that, you know, the market's so saturated, but also out of the other side of our mouth, we're saying everybody's an artist and there's room for you to make your art. But I don't think we can say that and then turn around and say the market's saturated in our particular discipline.
I love this. No. No, I love it. It gets to the heart of, I know, a conversation that we've had multiple times, but it gets to the heart of this idea when it comes to being in business. I don't know if y'all remember, I think I had happened to talk about an artist months ago who did stained glass. And he was irritated by the fact that all of these non-artists were getting into the field with the ease of education and all of these kinds of things. And they were saturating everything. And all of a sudden, people didn't have the respect for the work that they should have. And he was really mad because somebody was looking at his work and said, oh, my mom is taking a stained glass course in college and she makes stuff like this. And he was just like, so insulted. How dare you? You know, I'm an artist and she just is blah, 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 whatever. And it's interesting, Matt, to hear you kind of make that distinction between on the business side, where we have to be aware of this stuff and we have to keep our eye on return on investment and the bottom line and what our margins are. And if more people enter the market, how is that going to change or lower, or, you know, like, what do we have to do then to compete? And then from the other side, what are we competing for? right? Are we competing on price? Are we competing on availability? Are we competing on, what are we competing for? And obviously, if you want to make book covers, there are only so many people out there who need book covers. And so can you get enough of those a year, especially as Tom is saying, can you get as many of those a year if everybody is just making them with Midjourney or whatever? I have clients I know that are coming back to me despite what my prices are, for the simple fact that they really like working with me. And they like to talk to me about the things that they want and hear my ideas and how that's going to influence the work. Now, is that going to be enough to sustain somebody, right? Like, are we going to need every leg up we can get, even if that leg up is a little gold sticker on our website that says we're an award winner? Or that we had a viral video, or that we, like, in order to continue to exist in saturated markets like this, what kind of business decisions do we have to make? And it's easy to say, well, I don't compete with anyone because I'm my own person and my own artist and my own voice, and that's why people come to me. Well, when there's 50 million voices all screaming at the same level, how do you know which one to listen to or who to find? Or so I kind of wonder if at this point, what's really going to make the difference is when we kind of take that Seth Godin approach, which is kind of to stop trying to find a million people and start trying to find five, and find five people who really, really do connect, who you can get something, they can get something from you that they can't get from anywhere else, which is the you part of it, the way you approach it, the way you talk, the community that you build, the feelings that you give them, the subject matter that you choose, the colors that you like, the palettes you prefer, the compositions, you know, like all of these things when you combine them together to make you. And it used to be the way that kind of businesses were successful is you get the most amount of people, like the biggest amount of folks that you can get. And that's the same, that's the McDonald's and Coca-Cola and all of those things. But do you guys remember that little golf company that went out of business, that family-owned business? And I talked about it was a local place, and they had been in business for like 50 years, but their kids didn't want to continue the business. And so the business went out of, you know, it stopped operating. And I was really sad about it. I was like, oh, that's really sad after all this time. And, you know, la, la, la. And then it struck me, I'm like, why is that sad? These people had a successful business for 50 years that paid their bills, and that, you know, bought them a house, and that did all of these things for them. Why is it sad that they were never the biggest, that they didn't become a global sensation, that they didn't whatever? What do I need the title of genius? Do I need accolades from wherever, or do I just need these 100 people that can keep me afloat, these 1,000 people, these real fans, these people that connect with me and they love my work because it speaks to them and they like me as a person, and we you know what I mean, like we challenge each other, and we have this community, and when I do a thing, they're going to show up for it because that's how we are with each other. Maybe the answer at this point is not to go bigger, it's to go smaller. It's to become more personalized. It's to become more boutique. It's to become, and this is interesting, Lindsay, I want the accolades too. Who am I getting my accolades from? A person who doesn't give a shit about me because they saw my work in a magazine and they went, genius person? Or is it the person who's bought all 5 of my books and they show up every time I go live and they message me? And who do I want my accolades from? I mean, I guess it depends on what the goal is. But as Becca, the reason I'm bringing that up is because as you're asking about things like saturation and the global market as it gets bigger, it's becoming less viable for us to go big and let that be the way that we make our income. So the response to that is the equal and opposite reaction, which is to become smaller and more personalized. Because that's really the only thing a big audience cannot do. Because as soon as you make part of a big audience mad, it's going to leave you. As soon as you do the wrong thing, all of the people who disagree are going to stop. But if you can be really, really yourself with the work that you create with that small group of people, Maybe that's who I want my accolades from. Maybe those are the people I care if they call me a genius and not if anybody else does. I'll just say to Eminem. It's going to be loud, I'm sorry. I know I'm just crunching over here on mute. Thanks, friend. I could be completely incoherent. I don't know. I'm literally speaking as I think, so who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. Oops.
I think I get the little gold badge for incoherent rambling. You're good.
No. When I was asking the question earlier, I just wanted to make sure, because I think I did. Like, I missed what you were asking initially.
No, it's word vomit. It's word vomit.
No, it was me.
Are you guys both competing to who can be the best at word vomit?
Give
Haven't
me
we
a
been
gold
talking about
star.
just make your own word vomit? You don't have to compete. Just do the best that you can do.
That's right. It's just your vomit that's important. Grammarly told me today I had good word vomit. So,
I have a weird question, Nicole.
yeah.
If well, it's not if, because I know it'll happen at one point. Let's say your writing goes viral and you do really well, and you become the equivalent of, I don't know, J.K. Rowling or something like that. Just let's say Vanished makes it like a Harry Potter did. Yes. How much of what you just described would change? How much of the opinion that you just gave us, what part of it would change,
0.
if anything?
I'm saying 0, and
Do you
here's
think
why I'm saying it.
you'll still be in that mindset of, I got to connect with 5 people?
Yeah. Because if for some reason my work was to get stratospheric and a whole bunch of people went crazy over it and it sold and it did all of the things, I'm going to have an equal amount of people that hate me and an equal amount of people that think I'm a piece of shit and my work is terrible and it's all some mediocre white lady who happened to make it because, right? Like, I'll have an equal amount of people. It's not really my business what 8 million people think of me. But I do have those people that I keep close. And those are the people whose opinions matter.
Yeah.
And I will always be writing for them, because if writing for them is what got my work to explode in the first place, I would be really foolish to try to write for 10 million people. The quality of my work would disintegrate, because how do you make 10 million people happy?
But you may not know that until you're there. That's my point, is that your opinion may change because you're in a world that you don't know today. You may not understand today. That's really what
I mean, that's fair. I can't
Right?
I can't accurately predict
I mean, I
what
can't
I
either.
would
I'm just
think.
curious. It's just a question that came to mind.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I can't
your
accurately,
point of view, your point of reference will be completely different
for
than it is
sure.
today,
For sure.
right? And you
For
may
sure.
be looking at others that are there that become colleagues of yours, and you may be enlightened by then, right? I mean, you may have a different opinion on all of this. This is probably worthless, but I just thought it was an interesting question.
No, it's fair. Totally fair. I mean, we don't have a way to know how or if,
Yeah.
Everything would change when our entire paradigm gets shifted. But
And
when
then
I get what's that?
it's bringing it all the way back to the beginning too. I mean, what would that do to your self-confidence, to your self-doubt?
I am very scared of I'm very scared of big levels of praise. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before. Like, I know I say I want the accolades, but I'm scared of anything that makes me in danger of not being me anymore. Like, makes me in danger of thinking of myself in a way that's not healthy for me or the people around me. Like, that kind of stuff scares me. So, I mean, I would definitely be nervous about that. But I do have to say, when I get messages from my readers, like if they just message me out of the blue and they loved a thing, immediately that is the person I'm writing for, right? Like, immediately, like, I'm not thinking always about a whole bunch of folks and how everybody's going to view everything all the time. Even though when it comes to harmful content, sometimes I do have to be thinking about that. Like, I do have to be wary of things that could potentially be harmful and try to be really careful about those things, because we do have an effect on a big scale sometimes. But who are the people who matter and whose opinions count? Like the people who show up over and over again, right? The clients, the ones who buy, the people who keep coming back, the ones who go become members on my subscription platform and read everything I write. And I mean, those who matters aside from that, really? Like at the end of the day, who matters aside from that? Like my husband matters, but he doesn't really care about my work. I mean, he supports me in it, but it's not really his thing. So no, his opinion doesn't mean shit to me when it comes to that stuff. I love him for who he is and he loves me, but I don't care if he likes my work. He's not the guy for it, you know? But Angie matters. She loves it. She promotes it. She shows up for it. She appreciates it. She messaged me. I love her with my whole heart. Like, that's who I'm writing for, right? That's who I'm making this stuff for. I hope that doesn't change. I know we've gone over time. It's a good conversation today, though. Forgive me for blathering. Especially if you're like, I got nothing out of that at all. I'm very sorry. You're getting my unfiltered stuff. Yeah. The why. Focus on that. Yes, my lizard brain wants the accolades, but I know there is a real why, a purpose. And maybe it comes back down to that at the end of the day. To that question of like, does it matter? And who does it matter to? And why does it matter to them? And why do we make what we're making? And how do we measure our own success? How do we define it? Lots of questions to ask ourselves. Any final thoughts today? I'm going to go turn on my AC real fast. So I'm heating myself. It's in New Mexico. It's real hot. Final thoughts.
All right, well, my final thought to Nicole, pointedly, who's not here. I mean, just summing it all back up together, like whether, I don't feel like these things and, mentalities and philosophies are exclusive just to artists either. I mean, if you're out here and you're an architect and you're drawing those blueprints, there are those 100 people somewhere who are going to be sharing your blueprints in a viral way and passing them around and getting really excited about them because they're so freaking cool. Or your Gantt charts or like whatever it is that the rest of us are maybe like, wow, what I don't care at all. But there is going to be someone who does care, or 5 people or 10 people or 100 people or whatever it is in that niche little community who does want to share and be excited with you.
Yeah, like the person whose house you built matters to them.
Yeah.
I always love a good conversation about ego. And no, I really do. I mean, which is where a lot of this stuff stems from, right? Is what are we believing that other people believe about us? And what do we believe about ourselves? So it's just been really interesting. And I've been mulling a lot of stuff over. Where do I stand? I never even thought about that. Where do I stand on that? How do I feel about that? And yeah, so I love these types of conversations. I know that we've kind of poked at this same conversation from like 9 different angles before about competition and whatnot, but it's always nice to have a little bit of a breakthrough. And I didn't even realize I thought about saturation until we happened to talk about it earlier. So I got a lot to think about from this one. I'm going to just step back and make stuff and not care, but still privately care. Just a little bit.
It's a smidge. Any final thoughts from your side, Bassam?
My final thought has nothing to do with the subject or the discussion. I just want to throw out a shout out to Renee Robin for that last Thursday. We haven't talked about last Thursday. That was an amazing webinar, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just want to give her a shout out. It's great. Looking forward to other ones.
Yes. On that note, if you all, for whoever did get to be present for Renee's lecture, it was outstanding. And Matt's podcast class just went up live on the website. So highly encourage you. It's so good. Like, you don't understand how in depth and how good that class is. So right now, Dennis Dunbar's class on color grading is up on the website. Matt's class on starting your own podcast is up on the website, along with the Artist Forge book on artist versus money. So all of that stuff is up there. We're trying to not only provide great resources for our community by members of our community, like Dennis and Matt and Renee, but also to support artists so they get the majority of every single sale. We literally take enough to cover costs, and everything else goes to the artist. And so it's a really fantastic way for us to continue to support members of our community, to go learn from them, learn what they have to teach, and find out how that can help you. And also, we're trying to put money into the pockets of the people who are making a living at this. And we're also inviting folks to apply to come and teach with us. So that is an application process that will be up on the website very soon. Becca has kind of designed the bones for that, and that is going to go up. So if you are a member of the Artist Forge community and you have something you would like to teach, that application is going to be up on theartistforge.com. So I would highly encourage folks to do that. And we are kind of working out all the kinks right now in terms of Bassam is working on contract stuff, and we're going to be looking at, you know, how all of that's going to be managed. But I really encourage y'all, you may not think that you have something to teach. I guarantee that you do. I guarantee there is a lesson that you have learned over the course of being an artist that is going to help another artist in their career, in their thought process. And I don't care if you have an award next to your name or not. I don't care if you're running a 6-figure business or not. Do you have something of value to teach? Think about what that is, because your worth and the worth of your wisdom is not predicated upon an award on your website. Okay. So do the thing. Think about it. Do the thing. Ask people if they want to come join the community, because the education that is available here is going to be 100% community based. So let's keep putting money into the pockets of artists all the way around. I think you guys are amazing. I love these conversations. Thank you for being here today. For everybody who was hanging out, Tom and Dennis and Lindsay and Virginia, and everybody who had thoughts to share. Thank you guys for being here. We have the June challenge going on right now. Becca, what is the theme? Do you remember? It just completely slipped my brain.
New Renaissance.
New Renaissance. Yes. So whatever kind of art you make, go New Renaissanceify it and post it in the group with that hashtag. If you go into the Artist Forge Facebook group, there's a post for it. Post it in there, tag it, make sure we can see it. We're going to use our visual literacy skills. If you've been part of this community for long enough, you will have been here for all the visual literacy talks. We're going to use those skills. We're going to break the top 5 works down, so the ones that get voted up the most by responses and likes and all that kind of stuff. And somebody is going to get the thing we find the most intriguing and that connects with us the most is going to get 100% off of anything in the Artist Forge store. So we're going to give you guys goodies. So go make awesome stuff. Post it in there. Sorry, my kids are loud in the background. Go support the other Artist Forge community members. Be back here next Monday at 1, where we will have more conversations about art and art philosophy and everything else in between. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. Go make something crazy. And we'll see y'all next time.